Thanks, Brendan. Hey, everybody. Good to see you all again. If you attended my prior session, hopefully that was informative, but we did move very quickly through a lot of material. I know that this is the last session for today, so hopefully you'll take some information out of it that will be very useful for you as we kind of move forward. One thing that is become very, very apparent if you're here, this is all about GPT-5 and specifically ChatGPT and how you prompt in with ChatGPT. If you are not a user of ChatGPT, you're probably in the minority because it's one of the fastest growing platforms. Last week, I had a chance to be at the OpenAI Dev Day with a lot of other developers and other folks. And when Sam Altman got on stage, he announced that they have now reached, ChatGPT has reached 800 million weekly active users, which is incredible. So that is weekly active users. And their numbers are climbing even faster. They're building ChatGPT to be not just a platform for kind of conversations, but they're bringing more applications, more tools, and ChatGPT has evolved into not just a model and conversation now, but into essentially a canvas where you do a lot of the work. So they introduced, this. I believe it was a couple of months ago. GPT-5 was introduced. And with that, ChatGPT got a little bit of a refresh and a revamp. And for those of you who are not familiar with it, there was a lot of things that changed, but GPT-5 was a very different model that they introduced, and as part of that, very different kind of interface and experience that folks, um, a lot of folks kind of join a very different experience that is from before where you had to pick a lot of the different models. So we're going to explore a lot of that today. And we're going to talk about what's different about GPT-5 and how you think about using it. But you need to understand what's different and how it works and some of the capabilities. And, just to kind of go all the way to the end and give you the short of it, prompting is important, but it is not as important as it used to be. So things are, now, these models are a lot better. So what's different about it is that GPT-5, it's actually not just one model, it's actually multiple models underneath. So it's a unified system that autonomously adapts to your task. So you can give it a task to write you a short essay versus you give it a task to analyze a set of data for you or to analyze a PDF or multiple documents. It will adapt in terms of what kind of models it uses underneath. So you don't have to choose the right model. You don't have to choose a model if you want to create images versus if you want to have thinking. So what you get in GPT-5 today with GPT-5 is faster and higher quality responses. You get deeper reasoning on complex problems. You get better synthesis across sources. So when you upload 5 documents, it's able to reason through all of those. More reliable and professional output. So it was actually built for those. And of course, if you're a coder or if you're somebody who deals a lot with code, amazing code capabilities that were introduced in GPT-5. So the big idea here is we talked about essentially the unified system in GPT-5. And we talked about how it's not just a bigger version of GPT-4, right? It's really a fundamental, different architecture, which has this idea of a router to, excuse me, to send you to the right place, and it has an agentic execution. So lots of words in there, but we're gonna break all those down so you understand what's happening, so you can start thinking better what kind of workloads and what kind of tasks and things you can kind of do with GPT-5. The first thing is, so we talk about that real-time routers. This is really, really important. Underneath this router, this real-time router evaluates your prompt, and it chooses the appropriate mode of operation or model underneath, right? So whether it's going to be a fast uh, chore or something a little bit deeper reasoning track, if it's going to use the deeper reasoning versus a faster one. Um, for a lot of you, GPT-5 is probably the first model that you've been faced with that has the capability of being a reasoning model. So this notion of a model not just giving you straight out answers, but thinking through what you're asking and thinking through strategies and how to go about it, and this reasoning capability, this reasoning models are a whole new advancement in AI. So GPT-4 is a very different type of model. If you used the O model, the O1 or O3 models, you probably had a little bit of taste of that, but GPT-5 is that kind of deeper reasoning model. So it can work with multivariable problems. It will engage with more analysis, and it will kind of have this structured reasoning without the need for hand holding. So you don't have to tell it, think about it this way or that way. It will kind of try to do all of that. Think about like how you talk to a senior person and they know what kind of the paths they need to take in order to solve that problem. It also has agentic execution, whereas before you had to pick what tool you wanted to use. Now GPT-5 has all of the tools underneath it. So it has the capability of saying, okay, I'm going to make a plan and I have these tools available. I have the capability of creating an image or reviewing a document or pulling data from an Excel spreadsheet or writing code in order to accomplish something, or reaching out to the internet and using a browser to pull some information from the internet or go search for something. So it has all of those different tools as part of it, whereas before you had to pick what tool you wanted to use. So this agentic execution is so important, and it's something that we're going to be building more and more. You just tell it something and you don't have to specify what to do or what the path is. It knows what tools it has, and it can kind of call those tools and APIs, and it delivers kind of a complete polished result. So that's super important. So the reason why I'm mentioning all this thing is because the old prompt habits developed by previous models, they kind of leave a lot of performance on the table, right? And adopting to GPT-5's new capabilities is really key to unlocking its full potential. It's not just that, but it's also creating a mental model of, okay, I know what kind of problems it can solve, and then here is the context that I need to provide it, and here is some of the prompting, and maybe in a lot of cases the data or the documents around it, and how to think about that. So in a lot of cases, all those prompt templates and everything that you have, yes, those prompts are going to work, but you really don't need to do a lot of that prompt engineering anymore. Things are a little bit easier now with GPT-5. You can be very direct and you can get those answers. And to be honest, it's been a long time, well, not a long time, but I have kind of, I don't usually go to my prompt library anymore because GPT-5 is able to reason about and give me very, very good answers without me actually telling it all those things. All right, so this is not going to be a prompting 101 presentation. So if you're here to get some prompts, this is probably not your presentation. This is more about understanding what the capabilities are so you can then decide on how to think about it, or what kind of directions to give it, and what kind of workloads or what kind of problems to solve. So I'm going to go very quickly in here to give you guys a little preview of what that looks like. So now when you're in ChatGPT, and this is a team account that I have here for Element, but you're going to see a couple of different things. You're going to see basically GPT-5, And you're going to see this auto mode in here. So basically, it decides how long to think. One of the things that we're going to do is, let's say, we can ask it a very, very simple question to write an email for the upcoming meeting. So whenever we do that, you can see that it's thinking, and now it decided to say, okay, I have a lot of context around artists, so I need to understand a little bit more, what that means in here. And he has my context from prior conversations. So prompting becomes more about like what you want, to accomplish, and like rather than I need to have everything in one place, because GPT-5 or even Chat GPT uses all your memories and uses all your prior conversations. So a prompt that would be really, really good for somebody which has a lot of back history on the institutional information and projects that you're working on and so on and so forth is going to be very different from you or from somebody else. So you can see how that's different. Now, you can leave it in the auto mode, but then you can go ahead and let's go back here and decide that, you know what, this instant, I want to create an instant new chat instant, and it will actually, we'll see if it's going to give me. Yeah, so a little bit different in here. It did not go ahead and pull the context out from it. So it didn't think that much. Whereas the other one, it thought a little bit longer, around what to kind of bring in. So you don't have to worry too much about picking the right model. Certainly, this is available. If in a lot of cases, I wanted to think a little bit more, so I picked the thinking model. But in a lot of other cases, I just leave the auto mode on, and then it's going to pick whatever problems it needs to do. All right. So I just wanted to show you that because that's super important. But we're not going to do a lot of hands-on today. So you might want to explore yourself later. So when you start thinking about the unified system and the smart routing, um, you need to understand how that routing works, right? And it can change underneath, but essentially that router works in a couple of different ways. It thinks about what's the conversation type, casual versus technical versus creative, meaning that if I go ahead and ask ChatGPT to go back to auto and I ask it to create an image for upcoming Super Bowl, is going to invoke a different tool, an image generation, versus before you had to explicitly tell it to, pick one or the other. So it's picking different modes or, underneath, and it understands what kind of conversation it is, what kind of conversation type. It understands the task complexity. So is it a quick fact versus like a deep reasoning capability? So it doesn't need to go pull more data and do that work. It also needs to know if it's like it uses a tool requirements. So just like we picked an image in here, it used a tool to use a different model to route it to an image model to get the image back. It can also use tools to actually go do some research and then come back and provide you with that image. It also, you can explicitly tell it to, think hard about this, and it will use more thinking and reasoning. So the router is continuously trained on real signals also, so keep this in mind. And it includes your preferences and measured correctness. So it learns from your behaviors, and it learns when you tell it, no, 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 go think harder, or it learns, from your prior conversations. So ChatGPT becomes a lot more personal to you. Now, the deep reasoning model, this is a very, very different way of how you think about, than how you work with ChatGPT. For a lot of you, you're used to very quick answers, but it's not thinking. There's not a lot of thinking that's happening behind the scenes. So we can test that out in here, and we can give it, we can use, thinking, and we can force it to use more thinking. Um, so, um, so we can ask it a question. And the first thing that we're going to see in here is that now you see this thinking process. So let's retry it. I hit skip by accident. It's going to use this thinking process in here, and it's actually going to search the web. See, it's using a different tool. It's searching for Super Bowl predictions, and then it says, I don't have a crystal ball, but it did that search and it thought through it, and now it's giving you an answer here. But it's also, we're going to see exactly what it's doing right now. It kind of caught itself and it redid the answer again. So you can open this up, what the thinking behind the scenes is, and you can kind of understand the thought process that is going through. So this is the benefit of having a thinking model, right? It's actually saying, okay, this is the task. Let me understand what the task is. And I'm going to take different paths. I'm going to search the web. I'm going to figure some stuff out. I'm going to go ahead and do this. All we told him is to think about who will win the Super Bowl. And it's actually thinking for 56 minutes. It went through this whole process and it gave us, really nice output. And now it's putting that together. And it's saying the Chiefs will win. Really interesting, right? So this is as of October 15th. All right, maybe controversial, maybe not. So what it does, these deep reasoning models, it automatically thinks harder on complex multivariable questions. So we can just give it very complex questions, not just who will win the Super Bowl, but based on the economics, like how much, like how much economic value is the Super Bowl going to drive if Kansas City wins it versus, another, place and so on and so forth. So you can think about all these different things. So it evaluates trade-offs and optimizes for key metrics. And it doesn't require a step-by-step instruction. You don't have to tell it how to think through that problem. Structured reasoning, what it means is that it analyzes the problem, it weighs alternatives, and presents a well-structured solution. So think about that. Like you don't have to do 3 different versions and say, okay, pick the best version anymore. It does that underneath. And then there's no hand-holding required. So if you can tackle these very complex tasks and then open-ended problems as well. So I gave it that open-ended problem, and then it did all independently, did all the research and figured out, it's like, okay, what do I need to know in order to predict this? And it arrived at a complete justified recommendations, like you saw. So let's move on. The other thing that's new in GPT-5 is the ability to have longer and extended memory, or what we call context window. And right now, before it's about 2 times, or I think it's 2 times more than GPT-4 context window. It might be even more right now, but essentially it can have about 2,000 plus words of context at once. So it kind of can hold a lot of context, or actually maybe more than 2,000 words. I have to double check exactly what that, because that sounds, I think I might have left a 0 or so in there. But the larger context leads to better long threads consistency. If you remember, or if you were like me, and I asked a lot of follow-up questions, and sometimes it forgot what I told it in the beginning. So it can maintain a coherent tone and facts and plans across the longer conversations and kind of series of tasks. It also, this persistence of, it can persist style guides and project briefs. So if you give something as a project brief in the beginning, you keep asking other questions or give variations, it will do that, and you will remember and apply those guides and brand guidelines. And a lot of marketers use this. So they give this really large style guides, and now they're able to derive additional material because they can fit all of that stuff in the context. And then it also does the self-correcting. So you saw that part, right? So it maintains kind of consistency. And so it does the self-correcting. So it detects, if it detects like a drift, like in the past, this is a way to reduce hallucinations. So because it's thinking through this, GPT-5 has a lot fewer hallucinations than GPT-4 because of this. right? Because it's thinking through and it says, oh, I see that this is not the right path. So it kind of backtracks. So he has this internal monologue that he does, and essentially it reduces hallucinations as part of that. The part that's really more important here is you don't have to worry about what tool to use to accomplish your task or another. Um, and the reason for that is because it's agentic by definition. So ChatGPT, it kind of it functions as an autonomous agent rather than just a chatty assistant, right? That's kind of the if you want to think about it that way. So it can plan this multi-step solutions automatically, and you can say, okay, I'm going to use this tool first to do some search, and then I'm going to analyze that data, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and then if I need to use a coding tool, I'm going to do that in order to accomplish something. So essentially, he has access to all the tools, and depending on what the task is and what you've defined, it will go through that autonomously and you'll accomplish that task. It also maintains state over very long tasks. So you can give it this very, complicated task. You will think through. I've had tasks that I've given it to analyze different. For example, let's see. I've given it a task that it can go, minutes or many minutes in time, and then it kind of ship complete results. It doesn't, without you having to tell it. So think about like it's a mission complete mindset for GPT-5, right? You'll try to deliver a complete set of results on its own, and it breaks down those complex tasks into subtasks implicitly, so it understands that what it needs to do. All right, so we're almost there, folks. I know that we only have a couple of minutes here, but understanding these things is very important because you can trust the product more, you can trust the model more, and you can give it more complex tasks and understanding that it can actually do those things. This is an easy one. So better synthesis and integration. So when you look at ChatGPT now, it will actually kind of utilize a whole bunch of data connectors, and you can tell it to use different data connectors to kind of accomplish those tasks and integrations. So you can bring insights from like if you upload multiple files, it's able to track those multiple files and say, okay, combine the relevant information from this file and then cross-reference it with this file and then do this, and it kind of gives you it gives you it does all that underneath. I'm going to go, so it provides annotations also. So it gives you an understanding. It's like, this is where I pulled this information. Based on this information, this is where things came through. This is a really good use case. Where I use this is I'm having conversations or interviews, or I have a project, and I can load in a person's resume. I can load in their profiles, their predictive profiles, or their behavioral profiles. I can load in the conversations that I had with them. I can load in any other materials and then go through and ask it, okay, let's evaluate it against, this criteria and the job description. And it, in the description or in the output, it will tell me exactly where it pulled some of the reasoning and those annotations from, which I believe it and I trust it a lot more rather than hallucinating through it. And it maintains that consistency throughout, right? So the narrative goes throughout. Okay, so we have kind of one more and then some key takeaways here. So the last one, it's about professional outputs and reliability. So this is super important because a lot of times in GPT-4, you had to tell it, how do you want your style? How do you want to be professional? And if we're using this mostly for work, it becomes really interesting, right? It feels like you're collaborating with a thoughtful colleague that you can trust rather than just like an intern, right? And it really delivers this polished, business-ready artifacts. And by artifacts, I mean, a brief or a canvas or a deep research or whatever you're trying to do. So it's very high quality professional outputs, like I said, reports and plans and briefs, lots of tables, or it thinks about how to put the information together that it's consumable. And then you can specify deliverable types and sections and acceptable criteria up front. You can specify those things ahead of time, and it's able to digest through that to get so you can get the desired output. And again, like we saw, the outputs are more complete. So you saw the Super Bowl prediction. He went ahead and did the tables, and it understood that, hey, this is kind of where we stand, and the formatting is different. It's not just text now; it's a lot of different things underneath that. So it's really, really important because we can trust it a lot more to give us better output. All right, so we're almost at the end, and some key prompting tips here. I did say we're not going to give any prompting, but just understanding GPT-5 and the system, you don't have to do a lot of work, right? That's the benefit of it. It's like prompting becomes, think about how you would not, think about how you would send the information or how you'd put, like what you're trying to accomplish to a coworker and know that they have the context, they can think through it, they can take different directions without, having to tell them every single thing that they have to do. So, but you still have to be clear and specific, right? State exactly what you need to avoid any suboptimal routing, right? Meaning that if you're going to use the auto mode, you got to tell it exactly what you need. Meaning, like, hey, I need a report about this. I need a deck about this to break down X, Y, and Z, and whatever you want that output. So make sure that it understands what the task is if you wanted to analyze versus just give you something really quick, just versus give you ideas. So be specific and clear about that. Specify the context and the goal. Like this is kind of another kind of continuation, but help their router kind of understand what kind of task type it is. So like, hey, this is the goal or whatever. And then you can also use explicit intent in here. So things like think hard about this or deep dive into this topic and it activates a lot of the deeper reasoning. You can also avoid a lot of these things by just picking if you're saying, hey, I need more thinking around this task, you can go ahead and pick the think longer and better answers. Or if you just want something very quick and you're like going back and forth for facts and whatever, like you can just leave the auto mode on and that will also work. For a lot of work, I'm like, I always want to think very deeply for questions that I ask it. So I'm like, okay, let's go deep and put the thinking mode on. All right, folks. I think I've kept you here long enough. So I said let's prompt, but we kind of introduced and did that throughout, the course of the conversation. I tried to keep it, exactly at 30 minutes. I think we're there right
You were
now.
pretty spot on with that 30 minutes, artist. So
Thank you,
awesome.
thank you.
Beautiful.
If
Thank you.
if I know that we need to end exactly at the end of the time, but if folks have a couple of if there's any
Yeah.
questions,
Last
happy to
session of the
take a
day.
couple.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If anyone
yeah,
wants to throw any questions in here, we don't have another session run to. I'm sure you may have another meeting, but we do have some questions in here already. What was the benchmark for creating this agentic behavior? Was it based on how humans complete tasks or pulls
yeah,
research?
yeah. So the next phase of evolution, if you heard about a year ago, there was this all the LLM training hit a plateau. The capabilities of these models are hitting a wall, and then came out the O3 models, the reasoning models, and it's like holy shit! Like they're just so much better at completing tasks and doing things. So the way that these models are trained are through what's called reinforcement learning, and the data that you're giving this model this models is through real world tasks. So you give a task, like the data gets pretty complex, and now it shows step by step how to accomplish a task, so the model can mimic and interpret the reasoning behind how you accomplish something and not just output an answer. And that's how these models are trained. These reasoning models are trained with data that shows the steps in between on how you think about accomplishing a task. And now they're able to mimic that and reason through when you give it a task, and it's able to understand that. So very, very powerful. It's kind of a new all of these reasoning models. That's what's been unlocked with these.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Can Chat GPT-5 down the road help with video production similar to VO or Sora 2?
Yeah, so GPT-5 absolutely can help with video production. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I did was for my Sora project, I went ahead and I created essentially all of the different kind of characteristics for what are those different assets that you need or the different components of the video. I went ahead and said, okay, let's put together kind of a structured guide for that. And it actually went ahead and did that. And then I went ahead and said, okay, now based on this, let's put together kind of a prompt template pack for me. It went ahead and did that as well. And the last thing that I told it, I didn't have enough time to do, but I said, okay, now create a prompt that looks at an image um, and then creates a VO3 prompt that matches the template. It needs to be really good at describing the different elements of the shot. And he went ahead and actually created this, this kind of agent that I can now take in and create a custom GPT that says, okay, your purpose is to do this, this, and this. And then here's a prompt template, and here's the structured output. Here is kind of the technical style breakdowns, and here's some example full responses. So here's a scene versus now here's the prompt that it's deriving. Um, and it asked me, okay, do you want to create a usable version now so you can run? I said yes, and it kind of put together the GPT information that I needed. So, anyways, the answer is yes. So now I can take in this and I can describe, I can throw in an image in there, and it will kind of pull together all of the components of that image that to describe a cinematic shot that I can throw into VO, and it can go from there. Of course, you can extend it and say, okay, I need a way for describing dialogue or X or Y. So yeah, that's one of the things that I did, for a lot of those videos that you guys saw from the VO3 presentation.